And welcome back to PTH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and we are still doing spoilers for Ravnica Murders at Karlov Manor. I think this might be my last spoiler video. I've done quite a few already. So 5 more commanders we're going to take a look at here. And this one for sure has been getting some buzz. The Pride of Hull Clade. 10 and a green. That's a lot, but as I said before, I made a video. I can't remember what the subject was, but I was talking about how we're just never going to see a creature that is more than like 7-8 mana. Like 8 mana probably is the tops. We will never see a creature again, in my opinion, that costs more than 8 mana unless it has a cost reduction. And as soon as you see that 10 and a green, you just know it's coming, right? You just know there's going to be a cost reduction here. So we have a crocodile elk turtle. So I don't know if they're doing, like, what was the set before where they had like the mutant fish, whatever, like they combined all these really crazy creature types. It was Ravnica, wasn't it? Wasn't it a Ravnica set? I think they're doing that again. We got lots of weird creature types, combinations in this set. So a 2/15. And as I correctly predicted, this spell cost X less to cast, where X is the total toughness of creatures you control. So obviously 11 mana is crazy. You're going to want, I mean, are you going to go as far as doing Defender Tribal here? Maybe. I think you definitely could, or you could just put creatures with big butts. Like a Wall of Junk, what is that? Isn't that a 2 mana 07, right? Goes in all those Arcades decks. So if I cast just that guy, that's, obviously I get that out very quickly. And my commander is now reduced by 7. The spell is X lets cast where X is the total. And this is total toughness. So even if I just have a Wood Elves in play, now that's 8 toughness that it has been reduced by. I think you likely, as I say all the time, whenever you're building decks, you synergize with what your deck is doing and you want creatures in play. So even if your creature, I mean, you could get a bigger toughness than 1, but even just having that Farhaven Elf or that Sakura Tribe Elder or that Wood Elves or whatever in play is going to reduce the cost of your commander by 1. So all of the ramp that you put in this deck, you're probably going to want it in creature form, which of course in green there's a bunch. So let's just pretend I have Wall of Junk in play. My commander costs 7 less. So it only costs 4. Wow. Yeah, that's not much at all, right? So, of course, this guy has Defender, so the Defender Tribal stuff probably will work there here. Is this going to be a better commander than Arcades for Defender Tribal? I don't know. Let's see what this other ability is. So 2 blue. So this is a Simic commander. Until end of turn, target creature you control gets +1/+0 and gains. When this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw cards equal to its toughness and can attack as though it didn't. Oh my goodness. I was thinking, why the +1/+0? Why, right? That seems like a pretty pointless, but of course the reason why is because of the Wall of Junk scenario, because now the Wall of Junk, I can use this ability, give it plus, because it's not going to deal any damage. So clearly they want you to be doing walls here, because a lot of those walls don't have a power. So that's why the +1/+0. And you need to be dealing combat damage. So if you attack with a Wall of Junk, it's not going to deal any damage. That's why the +1/+0. And then with that, you'll draw 7 cards. But of course, I'm sure why everyone's losing their mind here is because you can draw 15 cards with your commander, which of course is insane. So if you use this ability on your commander, which, I mean, I imagine that's what everyone's going to be doing. Why would you use this ability on any other creature when you could just use it on your commander, right? I mean, I guess you could have a flying wall, like a Wall of Air. Isn't that a blue flying wall that can more easily get in for damage? But it just seems like the most obvious way to go here is just I make my commander unblockable and get in for damage, because there's lots of ways to do that in blue. There's, giving your commander evasion is not going to be difficult. Trample's probably not the best way to go here because your commander only has a 2 power. It will be a 3, but that's still not great. You just need to get in for damage, right? You just need to connect. The damage you're dealing isn't really that important. And then you draw 15 cards. That's nuts. Yeah, this guy's not super hard to get out either. Not at all. Whew. Yeah, I think people are definitely going to be going after this one. All right, another Simic commander that I think people might be losing their minds over a little. And when I first saw this one, because a couple of these I have actually seen already, floating around, and I wasn't that impressed until I started thinking about it. So Vanar Evolved Enigma, 2 blue and a green elf ooze wizard. So again, with the super weird combination of creature types, 3/4. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose 1. Cloak a card from your hand, or put a +1 counter on each colorless creature you control. And I mean, you could very easily build around that last ability of putting +1/+1 counters on colorless creatures. You could do Artifact Tribal, I guess. This could be a modular commander. This could be actually, funny enough, a great modular commander, because you're doing the +1/+1 counters and the colorless creatures. It seems like you would probably not do that because the cloak a card from your hand is so much better. And of course, cloaking, as I've already covered in one of these spoiler videos, means you put a card from your hand onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature with ward 2, and then you can flip it over anytime by paying its mana cost. So it is manifest essentially. You know, when you first see that ability, and again, when I first saw that ability, it's like, okay, you're just manifesting cards from your hand. You're doing the morph thing. Okay, whatever. And then I thought about it for a second, and I'm like, actually, that's really, really busted for a bunch of reasons, okay? First of all, you're cloaking a card from your hand. That means you can put any card into play. You can only actually flip it over if it's a creature card, of course. Or if you can flip it over in another way, and of course the most obvious way is to blink your stuff, because whenever you blink something, it comes back into play face up. So I can, at the beginning of combat on my turn, cloak a Omniscience from my hand, put it into play. It's a 2/2 creature with ward 2. And of course, my opponents, playing against this deck, the ward 2 is actually going to be really handy. It's actually going to make a big difference here, because when I'm cloaking from my hand, my opponents know it's going to be busted because I already have a Conjurer's Closet in play. And on my end step, that Conjurer's Closet's going to trigger. I'm going to blink that face down Omniscience I just put into play. And of course, it'll come back into play face up. So this is a relatively easy way to cheat some serious mana costs, really serious mana costs. And obviously you could do the same thing with creatures. Creatures and enchantments, I think, are probably your best bet here as far as just getting some really, really powerful permanents into play. This is just a really, really easy way to cheat mana costs by doing the blinking thing. I think that's probably the best direction to go with this deck. On the beginning of combat on my turn, I just put some really busted, expensive impermanent into play for free, and then I blink it with a Thassa's Deep Dwelling or a Conjurer's Closet for, or any other blink option, which of course in blue there's an absolute ton. So this is just going to be I think people are going to be making some pretty powerful decks with this commander for sure. All right, Dely Streetwise Lookout. And this one, when I saw it, I kind of laughed a little bit because, I've talked about in the past how whatever the archetype is, whatever direction you want to go with your deck, eventually we will have a commander for it, a commander for every scenario. And, this is something people have been doing for a long, long time now, and we have an actual commander for it. 2 and a white, Human Scout 2/2. Creatures you control with power 2 or less can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater. So we're doing power 2 or less tribal, for which, of course, there's a ton of support in white for that. It's very easy to build this deck. I mean, you got the board wipes. There's lots of those. You got the card draw like Mentor of the Meek. There's already a lot of things. I get stuff out of my graveyard. A lot of support already in this theme. And then also, if an ability of a creature you control with power 2 or less triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. So Skyclave Apparition comes to mind off the top of my head. I mean, that's an easy one, right? That is an ability of a creature I control with power 2 or less. So when it ETBs, I think ETBs is going to be your best bet here. That ability triggers an additional time. I'll exile 2 things. I mean, Sad Robot. That's another super easy one. It's really going to be easy to build around this ability, right? I have that enter the battlefield. I mean, this is trigger only, right? Yeah, so activated abilities won't work. But Sad Robot comes into play. I get 2 lands off of it. But then also my Sad Robot, when it dies, that's also a trigger. And I'm going to get 2 card draws off of it. So really easy build around. I guess it would be kind of fun to go down the rabbit hole a little bit. I don't want to so much use that term, but it would be kind of fun to get in there and find some really neat creatures with neat triggered abilities. And maybe some of them can be, some of those cards that we've never really seen before that actually might fit here. I really like the idea of maybe, hopefully, we can find some old janky creatures that, you know, a commander like this might actually make them a lot better. The power 2 or less can't be blocked also. Man, I'll just throw Feral Zealot out there. I mean, there we go. You know, if you want some rabbit hole suggestions from me, Feral Zealot is a card that I've always had an affinity for whatever reason. It's just a very unique card that wants to be getting, it doesn't want to be getting in for damage. It has that old wording of when it attacks and isn't blocked, it has the power 2 or less. I mean, it can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater, so I guess it can still be blocked, but if your opponent throws a small creature in front of it, it is just going to die. I mean, they could still block it, but it's just a funny old creature that would fit in this deck. That's a neat suggestion here. I guess the other thing you might want to do in this deck is put your archetype of whatever the white archetype is that gives all your creatures first strike, because you're going to be matching up. Because power 2 or less can't be blocked by creatures power 4, 3 or greater, which means they can block with a power 2. So if all your creatures have first strike, you're going to be winning all those combat, you know, standoffs with other 2/2 creatures, let's say, for example, right? If my commander attacks, my opponent blocks with a 2/2 creature, I win because my creatures have first strike. So first strike, double strike would be another great thing to add in to this deck. Pretty neat, I guess. All right, let's look at Lazava, Wearer of Faces. Another Lazava. Is this the third iteration, I believe? Blue and a black shapeshifter detective. So now Lazava is a detective as well. Everyone's taken up the mantle. 2/3. Whenever Lazava, Wearer of Faces attacks, exile target card from a graveyard, then investigate. So we have an attack trigger, which, you know, I don't throw Lightning Greaves in a lot of decks anymore, but here's one situation where I absolutely would, because I have a commander. Shroud's always good, but having my commander be able to get that attack trigger immediately is always good. And of course, in Dimir colors, haste enablers aren't exactly all over the place, so you got to use the equipment. You're going to exile a card from a graveyard, and it doesn't stipulate what kind of card. Any card will do, so we have Graveyard Hate stapled on your commander. I like it. And then you're going to create a clue. And of course, because we have the setup, we need the payoff as well. Whenever you sacrifice a clue, you may have Lazava become a copy of a creature card exiled with it until end turn. Okay, so you do want to be exiling creatures with this. So it is very similar to other Lazavas. So obviously we can exile a creature from any graveyard. I think probably the best way to go here, the easiest way to go here, I mean, you can do a mill theme like the original Lazava. You would just mill your opponents. That was mostly a milling deck, so it gave you more options. You can do that here to give yourself more options. Probably the easiest way to go is just I entomb whatever creature, right? I entomb my Shieldred or something, right? And then I'm going to attack with my commander, exile the Shieldred, and then I investigate, and then at my leisure, that's what I kind of like about this. At my leisure, whenever it's convenient for me, I can pay 2 and sacrifice the clue or sacrifice it some other way. I will just point out, any of these commanders that sacrifice clues, throw a Sage of Latinam in there, right? Because that is sacrificing an artifact. It doesn't cost any mana, or trading post, right? Anything that can sack artifacts, because you are still sacrificing that clue. You don't actually have to pay the 2 mana, right? And especially here, that will be important because you want things that can instant speed sacrifice those clues so that you can react to what your opponent's doing. And the reason why, I think, is because, you know, the best way to do this is the Volroth Shapeshifter idea that I've had so many times, which is instant speed. You know, in reaction to what my opponents are doing, I'm going to chuck something in my graveyard to turn my Volroth Shapeshifter into it. And that thing I'm chucking into my graveyard has hexproof, right? And with Lazava, you can do that as well, because my opponent is about to swords my commander, and instant speed, I sacrifice a clue, and you may have it become a copy of a creature exiled with it until end of turn. You have to be careful, because as soon as your commander leaves the battlefield, it forgets everything else. That's very, very important. You're not putting a memory counter or something on that card so that when you cast your commander again, it gets to see it. No, it only remembers the one. If you've exiled like 5 creatures with this iteration, with the first time it's sitting on the battlefield, it sees all of those. So I can switch to a creature that is hexproof to protect against swords. Then the next turn, you know, my opponent's casting a Wrath of God. I can sack a clue quickly and switch to a creature that is indestructible so I can survive the board wipe, etc. Right? So you're going to want to do that. That's how I would build it, because again, as soon as your commander is removed from the battlefield, it's going to forget, right? So I've copied a Shieldred. Now it's exiled and my commander dies. I don't get, now it's just gone. I'll never get it back, right? So you really want to have those indestructible hexproof creatures that you can copy, so that your commander can very quickly, presto changeo, right? Change into those things to protect against board wipes, because you really don't want your commander getting removed. You want it sticking around. It's phasing as well. Find some of those funny old phasing creatures. There's a few of them that can phase out, because that might be good as well. Pretty neat. I like it. It's definitely a different iteration that we've seen before, and, you know, fitting the theme of the set, obviously. Really, really nice. All right, lastly today, I don't think we've ever had this guy before. I certainly have never heard of it myself. Anzrag. I believe this is a new legendary creature from the set. The Quake Mole. 2 red and a green mole god. 8/4. Hooey. So have we had a mole before? Certainly you've had gods, and, you know, whenever I see a god, assuming this guy doesn't have indestructible already, got to throw that Tyrite Sanctum in there, right? If you ever have a commander that is a god that already doesn't have indestructible, Tyrite Sanctum's an auto include, because you can just skip over the first part and go straight to the second part and make your god indestructible. So whenever Anzrag the Quake Mole becomes blocked, untap each creature you control. Okay. There's already a bunch we can do there. After this combat phase, there's an additional combat phase. Alrighty then. Well, there's a commander people are going to like. So I'll just say, I mean, the combat thing is obvious. You're attacking, right? I will just say, when your commander becomes, well, I mean, obviously we're going to do the lure thing, and this last ability, 3 red, red, green, green, Anzrag must be blocked each combat this turn if able. Each combat. Wow. Your commander's only an 8/4. I mean, first of all, your opponents are probably going to want to block your commander. It's an 8/4, so they're not going to want to let it get in for damage. You can certainly build it so that if it gets blocked or doesn't get blocked, it's a win-win for you. I mean, getting in for 8 damage is a win, right? If I have one with nature, you know, a card that I like to bring up, I'll bring up a few neat cards that are going to fit here. Now, if my opponents don't block, okay, I'll go get a land, right? And I get in for 8 damage. Like, I don't want to use that last ability. I don't think it's necessary. I mean, it's nice that it's there, but you don't need to. There's enough lure effects, grappling hook, stuff like that. The blocking theme, and funny enough, I think I just covered a commander in another video that's doing the blocking theme. So again, was it the Tulsimir? So now we have another one. This one's way better, obviously. Anyway, I'll throw out a few things that I think are musts in here. Infiltration Lens, which again, I think I brought up in that video. So my commander's getting blocked already. Let's draw a couple cards. I also probably would want to throw like a Ksuri Gamma in here. That's a brutal. That's a great one. Ksuri Gamma is a great one because, of course, you're forcing your commander to get blocked. And when it does, with the, I think it's the power of the creature, it's going to completely wipe your opponent's board. That being said, though, you do want your opponents to block, right? So killing all their creatures is not great. I would probably throw Forbidden Orchard in this deck, you know, or any of the Hunted series that gives your opponents creatures. You probably want to be throwing it in this deck because really your opponents need to have creatures, and your commander's not blocked. It doesn't do anything, right? I mean, it gets in for 8 damage, but you really need your creatures to be blocked. So you want to make sure your opponents have creatures. So the donating creatures, you know, having your opponents create creatures is going to be really important here. You want to make sure you throw stuff like that in here for sure. Because if someone just cast a board wipe, you know, let's assuming your commander survived, I attack that guy, Forbidden Orchard, give him a spirit token, and now he's got a blocker, right? Obviously the lure effects, all of that. There's a ton of those that you can throw in this deck. Green does that the best. I will also point out, though, this says whenever your commander becomes blocked, untap each creature you control. After this combat phase, there's an additional combat phase. So again, the combat is obvious to build around there, right? We're attacking. However, you are untapping each creature you control. So you can just put creatures in here with great tap abilities, right? You can just, I tap my mana dork, whatever. I tap my mana dork, use the mana for something, and then my commander attacks and becomes blocked, and you untap each creature you control. You're not untapping just the creatures that you have attacked with. You're tapping all your creatures. So any creature with a great tap ability, maybe a Glissa, the mono green Glissa, you can start destroying artifacts. And every time you keep doing this and doing this, obviously you're going to try to repeat as many combats as you can. And every time you do so, you can untap your Glissa, destroy another artifact. And so, you know, or some example like that. I'm just saying Having creatures with great tap abilities, although red and green, maybe not the best for that, but throwing a few in here would be really, really nice to constantly be untapping and reusing them as well. Oh boy, we got some real winners in this group. These are like some of the commanders I've talked, like this one's going to be, people are going to go after this one for sure. It's unfortunate that what's that other red-green commander that is this exact same? I mean, that goes in this deck. They probably go in each other's decks. I wonder how many people who have that commander, that's an old commander now, I can't remember its name, I haven't seen it in forever. I wonder how many people have that commander might swap out for this one, thinking that it's better. Is it better? I don't know. They definitely go in each other's decks without a question. All right, there you go. Like I said, 5 commanders that all of them are looking pretty good. They're all looking like they're going to be popular ones from this set. I think Lazava might be my favorite one. Again, I really have loved that Volross shapeshifter theme since forever, and I'm always looking. Blue-black is the colors I want there, and I'm always looking for a commander that fits that theme, and that's the one that does fit the theme because it's doing something kind of similar. But you guys let me know what you think of these new commanders in the comments below, any that you're looking to go after yourself. That is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.